So today I'll be actually talking about APIs a little. I'll maybe go through the definition of what APIs are, why they came about, its history and stuff. And afterwards, we'll actually look at how to connect to a few open APIs. We'll first talk about what open APIs are, and we'll connect to a few ones. We'll connect to a weather API, and maybe if we have time, we'll connect to a Marvel's API. So Marvel also has a open API, so we'll connect to that also. So first, first let me walk you through the definition of an API. So the full form of an API is nothing but application programming interface. So similar to GUI, which acts as a interface between the person, the human, and the computer. An API acts as an interface between softwares and maybe companies themselves. So it facilitates software programs to interact with different data and use other programs' functionalities as such. So that is the main definition of APIs. And if we look at why it came about, so initially when API started, this started as something which was local. They had client libraries, and only people within a particular company or within a particular software company could use it. But when the .com era actually started, these websites were very crucial for companies to actually grow their business and reach new customers and stuff. So what APIs does is it actually gives us the ability to actually share content with other people, and these other people can use that content to either help their business or even help our business. So Netflix, for example, it actually gives APIs. Netflix and Facebook, for example, it gives APIs for people to connect, and people can do stuff which is helpful for Netflix. So instead of Netflix actually doing all the work, third parties can actually come in and help Netflix build new stuff. So this helps increasing the reach of Netflix and decreases the amount they spend on R&D and stuff. So APIs unlock the distribution channels by allowing data content to be accessible and usable on any device anywhere. And by opening these business assets to other parties, APIs considerably make the partnership between two potential partners very easy. And these potential partners, as I told, are able to actually make use of these APIs and design new products and new services for their companies. So what is the difference between a traditional company and an API-driven company? So this image here, the first one, is that of a traditional company, and this one is that of an API-driven company. So a traditional company, for example, if we take Tata Motors, for example. So let us assume it's a traditional company. So its core business is making cars. So they will have an HR team, they will have a finance team, R&D, IT, logistics, all of that they'll have. And usually what Tata does is it has, within its company, it has divisions for this. So what happens is these traditional companies, they have to internalize all these supporting functions. These are not as important as actually making and selling cars for Tata Motors. R&D might be, but when compared to the core business, this is secondary to the company. But because it's traditional, what it does is it has to create different departments for each, and it has to look into its maintenance and whether it's functioning properly, and it will have to spend a considerable amount of time on these stuff itself. But when we take an API-driven company, for example, let us take, for example, a software company. So this software company X, its main thing is making, it's doing projects for a company B or something. It can actually outsource its HR work, R&D work, logistics, and all that stuff. So let's take Flipkart, for example. Okay, not Flipkart or Amazon. Amazon, for example, Amazon, it actually delivers stuff. It doesn't deliver stuff. It actually connects us with the sellers, right? So when Amazon wants to actually use logistics to send something we ordered, if we order an iPhone, and if Amazon wants to send us that iPhone, instead of Amazon having its own logistics department and having its own trucks and stuff and investing a lot of money into it, what it'll do is it'll have an API which connects it to a logistics company. So that logistics company will automatically get data on how many orders have been placed in this area, for example, and what is the by what time do we need to deliver it, how far it is from the next order, how we can actually accumulate all these orders into one and make it efficient. All that, it will be able to connect to the Amazon's database and know what it has to do. So Amazon now can focus on its core business. So that is one of the most important features of API-driven companies. So API-driven companies can focus totally on their core business and can outsource very easily. So we look on types of APIs based on access. So there are primarily three types. The first one is private, the second one is partner, and the third one is public. So what is a private API? Private APIs are used within companies to facilitate integration of different applications. So within a particular company, if you want to give access to some data for some people, for one department, if you want to send some data, second department wants a different data, we can, within the company, we can use an API. So the advantage of this with respect to when compared to the other ones are that costs are reduced because we know who is going to use it, and it will be a small number of people who will actually use it, and it increases the flexibility also, because not a lot of people are actually using it. We can easily change stuff. If for example, if we take Google's API, actually Google AdWords had an old API, and the new one is called Google Ads API. So the old one was AdWords and the new one is Ads. So for them to change that is not a small issue. They have to consider the amount of work not only they have to do, but what amount of work all the people who are actually using it have to do. So because of this, they can't change stuff that easily. So they take a long time to actually they'll build up all the improvements and then release one after maybe 10 years or 5 years, so that there's no significant disruption in the way it works. But when it's a private company, you can easily change this stuff. So because if at most maybe 4 or 5 people are using those APIs, there'll be IT people. We can go personally and inform them that we are changing this. You'll have to do this to connect to our new database. So that will be very simple. So that's one advantage when it comes to private APIs. And these private APIs significantly improve internal operations because if access within the data will be used in a way such that people are able to increase their productivity. Department, for example, the finance department need not wait for the acquisitions department to send them the ledger, for example. So if the acquisitions department is buying some property A at the end of the month, not at the end of the month, at the beginning of the month, and if they update, if they give the ledger at the end of the month, what happens is for a 30-day period, everything accumulates and the finance department is going to be brought into the loop only towards the end. So this might disrupt or this might reduce the efficiency by which the finance department works. But when we have an API which actually connects to this acquisitions database every day and updates the data in a server, the finance department will be able to use that to their strengths and maybe do something better, or maybe make some improvements or give some changes which has to be done very quickly. So that's about private APIs. Next, we look into partner APIs. So partner APIs, unlike private APIs, like other than just the company's business partners will also have access. So now if we take the example of Amazon, so Amazon's APIs mostly partner-based APIs. So they'll give access to the large firms, for example, and they'll give the sellers. For each seller, they'll give an API connection in which they can maybe update the products they want, add new products, look at how many people are buying their stuff and what kind of orders are pending, all that stuff. So they'll give API connections to only the partners, business partners that they have. So that is partner-based. So what this partner-based thing has is that it adds value to their service. So now actually Amazon's so when for example when if we take Zomato, for example, if Zomato simply gives its sellers the option to sell and it leaves it at that, they can take some percentage of the commission. But if Zomato actually sells the data back, Zomato actually aggregates this data of all the restaurants in this area, and it tells that you can connect to this server and you can see how much you are selling, how much they are selling, what they are selling, what your competitors are selling, And for this, you'll have to pay me an X amount of money for looking at all this data and improving your own company or own restaurant for future purposes. So that is one way it actually adds value to the Zomato service, and this will also let them it will be a selling point also. So for example, if Swiggy doesn't have this option and Zomato has it, people will obviously incline towards Zomato more than Swiggy. So stuff like this is why partner APIs are important. Now when we look at public APIs, what happens is public APIs allows the company to expose information and all the functionalities of different programs to few or all systems, to third parties. These third parties need not be connected to the company at all. For example, Facebook might let you look at the data even though you're not a partner with Facebook, or Twitter will let you look at data without you being a partner. They do this because it increases their reach and traffic when you use this data to do something which is helpful for them, for Twitter or Google, for example. That will actually help them also, and they can delegate this R&D work also. They need not do all the work by themselves. Third-party people will obviously take a chunk of this R&D work and they'll do it for them, and this will increase the revenue streams they have also. So who is this API meant for? APIs are mainly targeted at developers or system integrators. So developers, software developers, people who help major software companies, and system integrators are people within the large corporations which help department A or company A connect with company B. So it's meant for these people only. So this API can now be seen as a plumbing kind of thing. So it connects these dispersed systems from different areas by linking them through pipes and channeling these all these data and sending it to different points. So an API is a way to feed or extend applications of a website which adds value and data and sends data. So now we'll look at some notable landmarks in API history. So initially APIs were created by OS, like operating systems only, Windows and Apple. This was done to attract developers and increase their customer base. And they limited this to very few large companies. So Windows, for example, might only let Adobe do it. They might not let us actually do anything for their, in the beginning, us doing anything for their application environment. And then bigger companies started using it instead of it being simply restricted to operating systems, other companies also started using it, and this helped them increase interoperability. And this was still only accessible to very large companies. Amazon Web Services, actually in 2002, they came up with a way which allows IT companies to externalize their computing necessities. So this gave these IT companies access to a lot more computing power at a much lower price, and let people with less resources also connect to a larger web service and pay a very nominal fee and use their services and increase their business and productivity. And then came web service APIs by companies like Twitter and Dropbox. So these help them actually create more it helped the developers or other people create an ecosystem around these applications. So Facebook, for example, we would have all noticed whenever we go into a website, it allows us to actually log in through Facebook or Google. So this also is an API only. So Facebook actually gives these third-party websites an access to a little bit of the information, not all of it, a little bit of information to just verify that this is you, and they'll maybe take your name and email address. So all these are web services that companies like Facebook and Google actually give. And then newer IoT APIs have started coming. Companies like Google have started doing this. They give real-time information from one IoT device to another IoT device, and they share this data with services both inside their company and even other services also. So now, actually, today we won't be looking at a lot of theory. Like, we'll stop with theory at this point, and then we'll look into how we can actually connect to open APIs, because I think it will be too monotonous if I keep on going with the theory. So we'll look at connecting to some open APIs. So open APIs are nothing but APIs which are openly documented, and anyone can actually use it by taking an API key from the website. So it can be based on SOAP or REST. We'll look at what all these stuff are, and maybe on the next KKS session. So now that we looked at what open APIs are, why are APIs becoming open? Because information is the number one asset and business has today. To gain market leadership, a company has to actually proactively handle their data and make compelling offer out of it. So that is one of the main reasons why these companies actually give us access to their data. And one thing that all the companies now know is that data is most valuable when it's open and it's driven by a community of people around it. So these are some of the popular open APIs, and if you want to connect, there's an API service for almost everything nowadays. If you want to connect to some API, for example, a weather API, you can go to sites like this and get it from there. We'll look at this maybe in the next session, but we'll connect to an open API now. I'm sharing my screen, so we'll connect to the open weather API now. So I'll share my screen. So what we need to first do is go into the openweather.org site, and then if you go here, you see a section called API itself. So first you have to log in, create an account if you don't have one, and when you go to this API section, you find that they have lots of APIs. So they have an API for everything. So for our session, we'll just look at one API which gives us the current weather data for one location one location by city name. Okay, so we'll go for this. When we get into this, we see something called an API call. So this is the call or information that we have to send through for you to get some data back. So I copy this now, and you see there's something called an API key here. So an API key will be provided by the service itself. So when you log in, actually they give you an API key. So because I've logged in before, they've given me an API key. If I press this, you can see that I open up a section which shows my API key. So whenever I want to access some information, I'll have to give them this API key to actually connect to their data. So because this is open, we need not actually do a much more difficult authorizations. So for this, we can simply connect using an API key and the name. So I'll copy this URL, for example, now, and I'll paste it here. So now we have to give a city name. So let us take Chennai, for example, and we need to give the API key. So for API key, I go here and I copy my API key, and if I paste this here and enter, we can actually do this through different third-party API testing things like Postman. There's a software which actually helps you streamline this and do it in a much better way. But we can even do it through the Google's search feature here, Google Chrome search feature here. So when I send this data, it sends me back data back in a JSON format. And if you look at this, we get the coordinates of Chennai, and whether we get that it will be cloudy here, and then our temperature is 301.14. So this is in Kelvin. So we'll have to convert it. So I suppose this is 31 degrees now, and it feels like 36. Humidity is 55%, so there's a good chance of rain today. And we have wind data and wind data, time, this is time in a different Unicode format actually. So we'll have to convert it if we want to look at what it is. So all these things we can actually get for Chennai's weather data by just simply sending the name and the API key. So now I actually wanted to show you how to connect to a Marvel's database. So Marvel also has an API which lets us access stuff like characters, all their characters, all their series, all their comics, or maybe just send in one character ID and get information about that particular character. So they have lots of APIs like this. So I think, do we have time or do I need to end it?
No, you can go ahead, Sanjay.
Yeah, so I'll maybe quickly go ahead with this. So there's something called Postman which allows us to test APIs and stuff. So we'll use that for actually testing this. So Marvel also has so API key. They also have an API key. There's one thing called public API key, and they have one called private. We actually have to send both these in with the request to actually get the data. And Marvel actually limits us to 300 calls per day, so it won't allow more than 3,000 calls per day. So that's what they did for our their free developers and stuff. So if you want better access, you'll have to get some more we have to get some more access or some better subscription or something like that. Yeah, so to get that, I've already actually copy pasted it here. So Marvel's connecting into Marvel's is a little more complicated than the previous one. So I'll show you what they tell, and I'll then maybe just go into what I've done. So if we want to get all the characters, yeah, so we have this HTTP and they ask for an API key. So other than this API key, they also asked for they asked for this API key in a different format, not the normal. We can't simply copy paste it. So to actually look at that format, we have to get into the documentation, and I had already done that. Let me just quickly open the documentation. Yeah. So in this documentation, if you notice, they tell that they need something called hash. So this hash has to be an MD5 digest of the parameter, your private key and your public key. So we have to convert this plain string into plain English alphabets and numericals into this using this MD5 converter, and then put it into the access. So I've already done that, and this has the hash. So this is the hash. Then we have the normal API key, and this is what we actually have to send in. So we are accessing an endpoint called characters. So an endpoint is the thing which we're connecting to get a type of data. So here the endpoint is characters. It can be series also, for example. So if the endpoint is a series, then we might get all the names of the series that Marvel has. So now if I simply send this request, what will happen is it will actually give me the results in a JSON format only. So it has sent me the results. So it is in a JSON format. So the first character is called 3D man. So they have a lot of characters. So I'll just go show you a few and I'll leave it at that. So they have lots of other data for within that 3D man. So they have stories in which this 3D man has been present, and maybe series in which he has been there. All that information is there in this. So when they send the character, they send the whole information about the character. Yeah. So next one is the A-bomb. So they've actually sent all the characters which are present in their comics and series in a JSON format, and we'll have to actually, if you want to actually make it more readable, we can actually use SSIS to convert this JSON format into a SQL database and make it put it into different tables so that it's more accessible and readable for us also. Yeah, so that is what I had for today. On the next sessions, maybe we'll look into the types of API providers, their business models, and the authorizations, and how to connect to SOAP-based API and extract it into SQL, and REST-based API and extract it into SQL. Yeah, Jagdish, that's all I had for today.